Greetings and salutations! Welcome back to my time-lapse of my human rogue. This time we are leveling from level 27 to level 28. So since I'm playing a human rogue, I thought it would make sense to maybe have a little talk about the races and the racial abilities in WoW Classic. So in WoW Classic, every single race can become a rogue, with the exception of the Tauren. But for this video I will only be focusing on the Alliance races. So, sorry Horde. So there's the human, there's the dwarf, there's the gnome, and there's the night elf race. I chose the human for two reasons. Firstly, back in the vanilla days I played a human rogue, so there was some nostalgia involved of course. But I also think they have some very good racial traits. If you start out with the non-combat ones, then we have the diplomacy, 10% reputation gain. I used to be one of these guys that grinded reputation quite a bit. So I actually ended up having the insane achievement. I did not have that on my human, however, but that would have been somewhat faster if I had had the diplomacy skill. Then there's the spirit increase. So spirit basically increases your regeneration, and that helps a bit while you're leveling, I suppose. I don't think it's too important, but it's at least not for a rogue, but it's nice to have. Then we have the stealth detection increase. So this is not passive, this is something you need to activate, and I suppose for PvP it can be helpful. I have it on my quick bar, as you can see right now, next to dodge. Or next to evasion, sorry. But I really rarely use it. But I'm not a PvPer, so I'm pretty sure it has its uses in PvP. Then there's the weapon specializations, so the sword and mace specialization skill. These give you a flat out +5 to your weapon skill, both in swords and mace. So this is very nice in my opinion, because especially when you go to endgame content and raiding, you are effectively one level higher, so basically level 61 in terms of determining what you hit and how much damage you deal. This, among others, helps avoid glancing blows, which is in short basically hits where you do reduced damage. So if you combine this with the sword specialization talent that you can take in the combat tree, then you effectively have 310 weapon skill as level 60, making you effectively work as a level 62 in terms of what you hit and how you damage, which is, in my opinion, very amazing. While doing some research for this video and this topic in particular, I noticed that some people online claimed that back in vanilla, that some guilds would actually reject you as a rogue if you weren't human. So now we're talking for the Alliance of course. Especially if you were a sword spec, because they would prefer someone else that could dish out more damage because of this sword specialization skill. So if you are planning to go high end, I think that is worth keeping in mind if you are deciding which race to play. Because some people might be more picky like that. Anyways, that was the human. So then we move on to the dwarf race. So the dwarf has some different skills, you could say. So first off, there is the treasure find skill. That basically allows you to track treasure chests on the map. Well, I don't think it's a very nice skill, because the moment you have a gathering skill, then you of course would be tracking your ore or your herbs instead, and then basically it would not benefit you in any way. Then there's a bit of frost resistance. I don't know how much 10 frost resistance it does, to be honest, and the only real place in the endgame I can see this have any effect is in Naxx. But whether or not these 10 would do a huge difference, I honestly do not know. So I would consider that a fairly weak ratio. Then there's a gun skill, +5. If you're going to be a hunter, I can see this work out for you. As a rogue, not really. So I do use ranged weapons. Mostly phone. Later I will go for other bows or guns of course, because you can get stats from these items as well. But this is mostly for pulling and don't really have any particular effect. I suppose maybe except for some of the raid battles where you need to do ranged damage as a rogue. I think there was it the Baron Geddon fight in Molten Core where you had to do that as a rogue. Then there's Stone Form. So Stone Form, I think it's actually a decent ability. It doesn't really help with your damage output and as being a rogue, usually you want to deal damage, especially in a PvE sense. But Stone Form actually grants you immunity to bleed, poison and diseases, and increases your armor by 10%. Only for like, I think it's like 8 seconds, but the good thing about it is that it also removes bleed, poison and disease, so it's basically a cleanse that you can use once in a while. And if you recall, while I was in some of my previous videos, while I was in Duskwood, right, near Darkshire, so there's a lot of these mobs that disease you for like maybe 10 minutes sometimes. So it would be really nice to actually have this ability to help you there. But if you're thinking end game PvE content, I think it has its uses in some encounters maybe, but generally not so much. Moving on to the gnome. So first off, the gnome has the plus 5% intelligence. That's basically for the rogue a wasted stat. You don't gain anything from that. Well, your weapon skills increases a bit faster with higher intellect, but I don't really see the benefit in that in the long run. Then, as a dwarf, we have some resistance. In this case, it's arcane resistance. Again, I'm not really down with the numbers of resistance, but 10 resistance doesn't really sound like that much in my opinion. I could probably have done a bit more research on this, but I don't really find these resistance traits so interesting. Then there's a bonus to the engineering skill. I suppose it gives you a head start while doing engineering. I don't really think there's any benefit at the end, so you will have 315 engineering rather than 300, but I am fairly certain that there's no recipes that require more than 300, so I don't see the benefit. I actually see the only ability they have that could be useful is the Escape Artist, that basically removes immobilizations or speed reduction effects. But as a rogue, you can just go for improved sprint, and you also have that. You could argue then, well, now you have 2 of them, and I suppose, especially as a PvPer, maybe that's nice. So it has its uses, but I think it even has like, doesn't it have a cast time, like a 0.5 second cast time or something? I should have checked that before I started this, but anyways, you have an extra improved sprint basically. So, but I would say the gnome is not a good choice as a rogue, especially for PvE, in my opinion. Then finally we have the Night Elf. So the Night Elf has a 10% or plus 10, not percent, to nature resistance. I already talked about the resistance, so let's not go more into that. I have no idea if that's good or bad, but I don't really see the use for it. Then when they die, they turn into a wisp. They have this wisp form, so they move 50% faster while dead. So initially that sounds pretty weak, and I suppose endgame it doesn't really matter much, but it does give you an advantage while leveling, especially if you tend to die much, and if you've seen my videos, in some cases I die quite a lot. Mostly because I do stupid decisions and try to kill mobs that are too high level that I probably shouldn't be doing anyways. And also, being a PvP server and there's a lot of people around, there will probably be a lot of PvP encounters in the future that could also benefit a bit from this, but it's a nice to have, but in the long run I don't really see the benefit of it. Then they have the quickness ability, this plus 1% to dodge. So 1% dodge is not a bad thing, I suppose, but in my opinion, when you're playing the rogue, you want to dish out damage, and dodge doesn't really help you with that. So again, it's one of those okay things to have. And then they have Shadow Meld. So it allows you as a non-rogue class or non-stealth class to stealth. Kinda. You can only do it while standing still. But it also gives a boost to your stealth if you are a stealth class. So I see that as a benefit only in PvP again. I would say there are cases when I have been stealthing around in PvE and I got caught by the mobs where I probably wouldn't have been seen if I had had this ability, but you can always vanish if you mess up, right? I am planning to do a lot of stealth runs in the high end, and it could benefit you there, but all in all I think the benefit is minuscule. So what is my conclusion based on this? Well, first off, keep in mind this is my opinion. In the end, it's about opinion, and if you want to play a gnome rogue, do go and play a gnome rogue. In the end, it's all about what you want to play. If you are into min-maxing, I would say do the human if you're Alliance. Especially if you're planning to go combat swords. Because the human has racial abilities that cater directly to that spec. So why wouldn't you? At least that's my opinion on the matter. Okay, so that covered all the Alliance races and all my opinions about them. Also, if we take the Horde races into account, I'm not gonna go through them now, but let's assume they are in the mix as well. Would you still choose a human if you had the choice? Or would you choose something else? In my opinion, I would probably still go with the human. I played my human rogue, and I also played a bit of undead rogue, and the Will of the Forsaken thing is a nice to have, definitely. Especially against priests and warlocks. But being a PvE kind of guy, I still think that as a rogue, it's all about dishing out that extra damage. So before we get to the end of this video, there's a few things I'd like to just clarify, like on a technical level. So the observant user might have noticed that there has been a few strange cuts throughout this video. And the thing is that I am recording this as I play, so that we are talking like hours and hours of footage. And there's no way I'm gonna go through all that footage. I try to like go through it like loosely, but sometimes after I've done the whole time-lapse thing and I go through it again, there's a few issues. Sometimes I might have been chatting on Discord that pops up in the middle of the video, and I've been fairly decent at avoiding that, but especially for this video, apparently I didn't. So there's a few gaps in between that I have edited out because, yeah, well, real life kinda came into the mix, I suppose. So anyways, I think we are just about to hit that sweet level up, and here it is. So, thank you so much for watching. If you like what we're doing here, consider leaving a like. And if you're new, you should consider subscribing. It would be nice to see the journey all the way to 60, wouldn't it? Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and you'll see me in the next video.